Good morning, everybody. My name is Larry Jacobs. This is Pre-K-12 Education Talk Radio, and it is the 13th of November, 2023. Thank you for being with us today. We've got, besides you, we have Dr. Molly NESS, our good friend from Learning Ally, where she is the Vice President of Academic Content. You're probably seeing that up on your screen right now. And we're going to talk about Molly's new book, her fifth book. Congratulations, Molly. We'll bring you on in just a second. All about read alouds for all learners. And this is the interesting part to me, grades pre-K through 8. And we're going to talk about how that fits in grade 8, because I taught grade 8, and this never occurred to me at all. So I'll talk to Molly about that. And also, congratulations to my good friends over at Learning Ally. The company is 75 years old this year. Congratulations on that, 75 years of service to students and teachers and to the whole world of education. So thank you, Learning Ally. We're going to archive the show over at ace-ed.org. Take a minute, go over there, ace-ed.org, our home website for our American Consortium for Equity in Education, and our magazine, Equity and Access, is over there. All the podcasts like this one are archived over there. Our Excellence in Equity Awards program, all the information is over there, plus a ton of other stuff, all free. So please go over and see what we're doing for equity. Honor yourselves and your colleagues with our Excellence in Equity Award, and read some good stuff about what's going on in pre-K-12 equity these days, ace-ed.org. Without further ado, the one, the only, Dr. Molly NESS. Hi, Molly. It's Larry here.
Huh. Good to hear from you again.
Good to have you on the show. I agree. I almost said you were 75 years old, and I didn't know how much the company was, but I know you're much younger than that. Right? Not even.
There are some days I feel that old, though.
It's getting to be winter pretty soon, so you're going to feel that way a lot more days. Okay, till we get back to spring again. It is getting to be winter in Maine. Where are you today?
I am in Westchester County, New York, right outside of the city.
Yes, it is. Hasn't moved in years, Westchester County. Okay, good part of the world. Okay, I got to tell you. Hey, congrats on your fifth book. Okay, I'm going to read the whole title here. Okay, Read Alouds for All Learners: A Comprehensive Plan for Every Subject, Every Day. And then this is the part that I have to ask you about: grades pre-K through 8. Okay, I taught 7th, 8th, 9th grade, 10th grade. Nobody ever thought about a read aloud. Help me. Why is this appropriate for, I'll say, beyond elementary school? We'll go into that. Molly, help me. Then we're going to get into the details.
Absolutely. Well, we know the benefits of read alouds don't stop when kids sort of move past the sitting in front of the teacher in the rocking chair, young children reading, listening to a read aloud from a picture book. We know that read alouds are one of the best ways to build language comprehension, students' ability to build background knowledge and vocabulary. And we know that students, their listening comprehension far exceeds the comprehension of the text that they encounter in independent reading until about 8th grade. So as we read aloud in content areas at upper middle school, we provide access to vocabulary and background knowledge that they might not encounter on their own.
So, in my opinion, the way I read this, the kids are reading aloud, right, with the teacher there. Am I correct?
No, the teacher is reading aloud from a wide variety of texts. We sort of all have this idea of the read aloud being, the teacher reading a picture book as she sits in the rocking chair and the kids are on the floor in front of her. And really what we know is a social studies teacher can read aloud from a speech that a political figure that they're studying delivered. We know that a physical education teacher, if they're starting a new unit on a new sport, say volleyball, it's a great idea to take the rules of the Volleyball Association and read them aloud to students. A science teacher who is beginning a unit about global warming can pick up a newspaper and read aloud from the stories of raising temperatures and El Nino and all these different opportunities. So it's not just we read picture books from start to finish, but we look for opportunities to do read alouds in short bursts throughout the day.
Yeah. Are the kids following along in the same text at their desks or whatever? Or how do you see this? I mean, are the kids following, or are the kids just sitting there? And I have to ask these questions because this topic really struck me over the last few days as I was preparing for it. Okay? But what are the kids doing while you're reading aloud? You're the teacher, Molly. Congratulations. Get your class under control, young lady. Yeah.
Well, there's lots of things that the students could be doing. Some students may just be sitting and attending to the teacher as he or she is listening. That may be all that they're able to do at that point. Other kids may have a pad of sticky notes and they're generating questions, jotting down questions that they have as the teacher reads. So the kids don't need a copy of the text themselves. It actually sort of frees up lots of possibilities when we're not then having to get student copies of the text. So the kids are really just listening and attending, and we know that that is going to help build their executive function, their ability to attend to text, and again, give them that language comprehension. When we have conversations about the science of reading, we're so sort of hyper-focused on the word identification skills, the ability to lift words off the page. But we know that in order for students to be proficient readers, they have to have vocabulary and background knowledge and use of language structures. And all of those things are possible when teachers read aloud to them.
Have you seen, this is really interesting to me because, again, it's been a long time since I was a teacher, and I was a 7th, 8th grade, 9th, 10th, whatever, a social studies teacher. Okay, and I can't remember ever reading aloud to kids. Okay, I know kids read aloud, and I read aloud to my kids when they were little. Okay, but never in class like that. At least I don't remember it. Okay, and this to me is absolutely fascinating. Is anybody getting this idea too? I'll just say social studies teachers that you got to read aloud. Besides you, Molly, you're always the best. Molly Ness is the best. You can take that to the bank, okay? So I'm curious, where is this in the scheme of things? Good.
Well, good. I wrote this book exactly to give the message of the power of read alouds and the importance to thoughtfully plan for read alouds, and that every teacher could, should, gets to, has the opportunity to read aloud. And what we know is that kids actually really enjoy it. There's a trend in the data that shows that we as teachers and as parents typically stop reading aloud to kids right around 3rd or 4th grade. It's called the decline at 9.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what we know is that we sort of assume that kids can read on their own, or kids think it's too babyish or what have you. But survey results of kids show that they wish their teachers or their parents continued to read aloud as they get older. So we know it's something that students are asking for or wishing for. And we also know that most teachers really have positive associations with read aloud. It's their favorite time of the class, of the day. When I was a 6th grade teacher, my kids would come back from recess. We had a combined recess and lunch block, and kids would come back totally hyped up, talking about whatever had happened in the lunchroom or recounting what had happened in, volleyball or what have you. And I right away did a 10-minute read aloud, and it was sort of the welcome back to the classroom, settle in, get your bodies calm, get your minds ready to read. And it really created a whole community of readers and gave my students access to text that they would not have gotten to on their own because their reading skills were lower than the information that I was reading aloud to them.
So they could, that's an important point. So was there, I'm going to say this the right way, was their listening comprehension better than their, quote, reading comprehension? My question is, what are we trying to accomplish by this? Are we trying to accomplish, I know you're an expert in linguistics, are we trying to accomplish that, or are we trying to get them to understand the facts that I'm reading? Let's just say I read something from the Declaration. Go for it, Molly. Yeah.
There are so many benefits of read alouds, and fortunately the research about reading aloud shows how many sort of the multifaceted ways in which students benefit from read alouds. Their language improves, their background knowledge improves, their vocabulary improves, their ability to identify themselves as readers improves as teachers read aloud to them. Their tendencies and habits of independent reading improve. There are a wide variety of socio-emotional benefits when kids listen to a teacher or parent read aloud. We actually know there's some pretty mind-blowing research now that's showing physiological benefits when kids listen to read aloud. Their heartbeat sort of calm, their respiration increases. Children who are hospitalized and listen to a parent or caregiver read aloud, they self-report lower levels of pain because of listening to a read aloud. So there's just such a wide variety of benefits for reading aloud to children, and they're across all populations of children. Children who have special needs, children who are learning English. So there's just such a powerful body. Absolutely. There's just so many reasons to read aloud, and fortunately we are at a time when there is such rich material to choose from that it should be one of the cornerstones and the highlights of our instructional day.
Well, what's the psychology behind this? You know, this is actually a funny way to put this. My son and his wife are getting a new dog, a puppy, from a breeder. And you're going to think I'm nutty here. One of the things they bought when they bring home the dog, okay, is they bought a little heartbeat machine. So when the little puppy sleeps, it hears a heartbeat like it heard up until the day they took it from its mommy. Okay, isn't that cute? That's adorable.
Yeah.
Okay, my question is, think of the same way. Psychologically, kids are being read to when they're very young and through whatever in their house by mommy and daddy. Okay, and is there some kind of psychological thing to reading aloud that makes people feel more at home or something, or more cuddly, or
absolutely.
more fetal, or what? You know what I'm saying? Okay, it's like a little heartbeat monitor. It absolutely creates this community of interaction around a text, around a shared experience. We have those warm, fuzzy feelings when we are read to. And I should say that there's actually some pretty compelling research starting to look at older adults, people in senior citizen homes, who their memory increases as they're read to. So there are just so many reasons to. We actually start to see children who display behavioral challenges when they are read to. Parents and caregivers report fewer incidents of frustration and outbursts and some of those challenging parent behaviors. So again, this is one of those, I wouldn't call it an intervention, I would call it an interaction that is free, and it's easy to do and applicable to everybody, and that there are just so many benefits. There's actually, speaking about your family getting a dog, there's actually sort of in a little bit of a different twist, but there's some research showing that when kids read aloud to dogs or stuffed animals, that their self-efficacy, their confidence in themselves as readers increases, because that dog or that stuffed animal is kind of a neutral party. They're not going to make fun of them. They associate it more with pleasure, because, you know, the dog's not going to say, you pronounce that word wrong, or you sound dumb, or what have you. So there's a whole program of kids reading aloud to shelter dogs and seeing huge benefits from that. Wow. Now, my son's dog will be so smart, it will be reading to my son. I'm looking forward to that. Okay, this will be a very smart dog. Okay, a yellow lab, by the way. Okay, does it matter? Here's a good one. Okay, if a teacher is reading aloud, all right, let's say it's a teacher. All right, what if they just played a recording? And say, hey, I want you to listen. This is the audio book. This is Joe Jones. He's reading the Chronicles of Narnia. Here, listen to this. Okay, that's the same thing?
Well, so I'm a big fan of audiobooks. Obviously, my work at Learning Ally is all about the power of audiobooks.
Of course.
And they certainly have a power and a role. The one challenge, though, when we just put on an audio book and we lose the powerful interactions where a teacher can stop and say, hey, this reminds me of the field trip that we just went on, or this is just like somebody in our classroom. So if you're going to use an audiobook in lieu of the teacher providing the read aloud, I'd want to make sure that the teacher still has the ability to stop and sort of connect to the kids in the classroom. You can't. One other thing I was really conscious of when I was a teacher is literally sort of reading the room as I was reading aloud. I could see when my students were losing focus, and I might, fast forward a little bit, or I could see when they were confused, and I might sort of explain a little bit. So that teacher-delivered read aloud certainly has more opportunities to do that. But, of course, those audiobooks are a great way to get at it because we don't always have the energy to deliver a really high-quality read aloud every
I'm just
day.
going to say that because the quality of an audiobook has a lot to do with the narrator. Okay?
Absolutely.
And
we've all stopped audiobooks that
we all know
the
that.
narrator. Yep, sure.
Yeah. They can make it come alive. And it's some I have to say this the right way. I think, help me out here, I think that once you get into middle school where the teachers are more subject-oriented, as opposed to elementary school, okay, they're trained differently, if I may, okay?
Sure.
What are you finding among when you did your research for all this? Again, I have the book linked here, but it's Read Aloud for All Learners, Molly's book, okay? Grades K-8, okay? What are you hearing from teachers in 7th, 8th, 9th, 7th and 8th grade, 6th, 7th, 8th, okay? Middle school teachers, subject-oriented people, not that they don't like kids. They're not used to this kind of thing. Talk to me. What do teachers need to know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the statistics show that at the middle school level, content area teachers read aloud with much less frequency. And so a big part of the book is to show the ways in which a 8th grade biology teacher or a 6th grade civics teacher can still embrace those read alouds. And I'm certainly not saying that that 8th grade biology teacher is going to necessarily read aloud from a picture book, but there's all sorts of opportunities to connect to our content through reading aloud, be it a picture book that explains a complicated subject more concisely, or reading aloud from speeches, or there's just so many opportunities to do it. And again, we're not talking about providing explicit instruction in reading within that content area, but using those texts that we read aloud to bolster and to strengthen our content delivery.
And and I mentioned this kind of earlier, and I know you mean that a teacher reads aloud, but what if let's say they devote 20 minutes to this, a half hour to this, and halfway through they say, okay, let's have each of you read a paragraph. How does that affect everything? Is that bad or good?
So I would want to make sure that the students, if they were reading aloud to a partner or to the class, that they had already seen the text. In other words, we don't really want to kind of cold call kids and say, Johnny, you read page 1, Susie, you read page 2. That's a practice called round robin reading, which we know is not particularly effective. Yeah, it's not particularly effective. No. It takes a whole lot of instructional time, causes a whole lot of particularly for our struggling readers, a whole lot of issues with confidence, and doesn't really serve our and it doesn't actually really serve our readers in our classroom who are stronger readers, because they're just listening to their colleagues. They're not necessarily getting a better model. So if we're going to do some of that reading aloud where kids are reading aloud, I would make sure that the text is something that they've already seen and had the chance to rehearse, rather than just sort of that cold.
That's a great idea. I love that. Well thought out. It reminds me, what grade was I? I was probably in 3rd or 4th grade. Okay, and the teacher who probably was so far behind on her work. Okay, she assigned us to read a short story, but we had I just love telling the story. She had us read it aloud, one sentence per kid. We just went around the room in our little rows. Okay,
Sure.
so sometimes the sentence was the word "oh," and that was it. That was the sentence. Okay, but there was a word in it. I'll never forget this. ROGUES, rogues. Okay, it's about a little bunch of thieving guys, rogues. All right, which the first kid who saw it read it as, never saw the word before, read it as Rogers. And so with 20 kids ahead of me, everybody who saw the word read it as Rogers. The teacher wasn't paying any attention because she had work to do. Okay, and I was hoping when it got to, I still remember this, I was hoping when it got to me, I would have the word so the kids would all go, oh, you said it wrong, and the teacher would correct it. Okay, but she didn't. Well, it never happened, and to this day, they probably all read rogues as Rogers. Okay, the
absolutely.
teacher, it was the most ridiculous day. And she must have been like, you better get this done this afternoon, Suzanne, or whatever. You know, the principal must have
Well, and think about how much precious instructional time was used on that. And chances are in that classroom, there was the kid next to you who wasn't listening to the kid who was reading aloud, but instead was elbowing their neighbor and saying, how do you pronounce this one? So, they wouldn't get laughed at. And so it's not, it's round robin reading is one of those instructional trends that I kind of think of it as like a New York City cockroach. You just can't get rid of it. We've all sort of grown up with those experiences.
That's why she's in Westchester, ladies and gentlemen. That's why she's in Westchester.
Yes.
Although I hear there is a pizza-eating rat somewhere around Westchester. Is that true?
I wouldn't be surprised.
It's funny. I'm talking a long time ago now, Molly, but I still remember that. I was so ticked off, and I was going to raise my hand and say, "This is the wrong word." But A, I didn't want to look like a jerk in front of all my classmates, and B, the teacher wasn't paying any attention anyway. I'd still have my hand up, okay, if I put it up. It was so far behind in something. It just struck me. So it really doesn't work, okay? But reading aloud does. So how long should reading aloud take? Now, you said you did it just when the kids came back from lunch, so I'll assume 15 minutes. Well,
I did about 10 to 15 minutes. And I absolutely understand the time constraints of schools. There may be a biology teacher who has 40 minutes and they have a whole lot of content to cover, so maybe it's more like 8 minutes. I also want to be really clear that it isn't something that we have to do 8 minutes start to finish, meaning we can, read aloud from 2 paragraphs here and then, teach a bit of our lesson and then choose another text and read aloud for 4 minutes. So we don't have to read aloud from a text that we start and finish in the same day. We don't have to read aloud in, a straight consecutive block. So it's not sort of, I think of it as these like short little instructional bursts that add up over time. Like they say that, if you don't have a half an hour to exercise in one whole block, like do 8 minutes here and 10 minutes there. And it's the same thing. We're still getting the same benefits when we interject those little read aloud bursts throughout our day.
Well, and and I'll say it again, the elementary teachers read aloud. They do, and they do good at it. Okay, but it's kind of too quickly forgotten as the kids move on. But again, the teachers normally weren't trained. It's too big. This is why this. Yeah, go ahead, Molly. Yeah.
I would say that there are some of us elementary teachers, we often sort of think of the read aloud as a luxury, like it's one of those things that if something is, we're running out of time, we'll push the read aloud aside. Or one of my favorite picture books, Miss Nelson is missing, the kids are misbehaving, and so their punishment, there's no read aloud for the day. So it's one of those things that sometimes feels like I'll do it if I get to it, or I'll do it if my kids earn it. But what we know is the research shows there are just so many benefits. It has to be a must do, should do, get to do, want to do every day, and not one of those things that kids have to earn or we push aside when our day is frenetic or what have you.
And I want to say the book, and I'll say this again, the book is Read Alouds for All Learners. And I just, with all the kids when English as a second language, I mean, to me, that's really important. Okay, right there.
Sure.
Okay, but this is kind of good for everybody. This is kind of good for everybody, the way I'm hearing it from you. But what if there's kids in the class, you're reading aloud, but some kids, I've already figured everything out. They're just bored. Okay, does everybody have to listen? Is everybody just sitting there listening? You said some kids are taking notes, some kids are nudging the other. But what if you notice the kids aren't listening?
Yeah. Well, I think you have to find what works for your kids. So there may be some kids that are jotting a question down on their sticky note that we come up to later. There may be some kids. I get that, but I'm talking about the kid who's just not listening, not paying any attention, really. Yeah. So those are the times when I say, you know what, pause. I'm going to pause here. Turn to your neighbor and explain what is happening so far. So the read aloud doesn't necessarily need to be this passive sort of you sit and as a kid and get it. There can be lots of interjections and student interactions throughout. So it could be, if I have that kid who I think isn't listening, turn to your neighbor and say, what's the most exciting part of the story so far, or something that you learned that was new. So there can be those student interactions as well, so it doesn't feel like a sort of passive activity for students. And what are you hearing from, I know you've talked to this, so what are you hearing from the teachers of the more upper grades of your book? What's the feedback? What's their interest? Yeah. I'm hearing that a lot of people are saying, like, wow, the read aloud, it used to be this thing that we embraced and then we sort of pushed to the side, and I'm so glad that we are shining the light on it again because of data there is around its value, its benefit. I like doing it, and my kids look forward to it. I hear from so many teachers who their kids, they stop the read aloud, they're reading a chapter book, and they'll close the book and say, all right, that's it for today, and the whole class will groan and say, just, one more chapter, please, or what have you. So that it creates that we are all a community of readers and a common language between students, not to mention all of the instructional benefits. So I'm hearing people are saying, like, thank goodness you're giving me not only permission, but a reminder of why we should include read alouds. And particularly in conversations about the science of reading, how essential read alouds are to building background knowledge and vocabulary. And they also build community. Is there any school-wide read alouds? Say that 10 times fast. School-wide read alouds that like where the principal gets on and for 5 minutes reads something. Well, there are absolutely so many different school-wide, community-wide read alouds that bring together readers of all ages. There are such amazing projects by one of the towns that I spend my summer in Maine, they do a read aloud. They choose a book that has a film adaptation. So you can go and it's usually a middle grade chapter book. You can go pick up a book free. It is supported by a local business. Mm-hmm. The families will read it, teachers will read it, and then they will come together on a Friday night in Maine in the winter when there's not much else to do, and they'll watch the film adaptation of the movie, and they'll have these great conversations between teachers and children and grandparents and cousins and the business owners, where they'll say all of those things that we do when we see the film version. Oh, I didn't think the character was going to look like that, or they left out the best part, or the book was better. And what that does is it creates a whole town community of read aloud, of reading and read alouds, and a culture of reading. One of those, I think it's one of the best low cost. Typically what will happen is a business will spend a couple $100 getting multiple copies of the book so that anybody, even if they're not a library patron, they can get a copy of it. They will often do, pizzas for the movie night or what have you, and it just really brings people together. They started it actually as a kind of upper elementary school, middle school idea. It became so popular that there's now an adult version of it as well as a teenage version they figured out that the teenagers were sort of too cool to come to the library, so now they actually get a school bus and they all go to a movie theater to watch the movie. But it has been highly successful with readers of all ages.
Well, there you go. Kind of like a book club. I love it. This is great.
Yep.
Molly, you're always thinking. You're always on the cutting edge. You're always on the cutting edge.
Well, I'm fortunate I'm fortunate to live and work in a community where people are sharing ideas about how to empower kids as readers and transform kids and communities into cultures of reading.
Yeah, we got to do that. And by the way, I want to say this, Molly, are you still doing your End Book Deserts podcast? Are you still doing that?
I am. The newest episode was so much fun. So I followed a husband and wife author-illustrator couple. They had the crazy idea of taking a short school bus, not a full-size school bus, but one of those sort of condensed school buses, and transforming it into a living space. They spent an entire year with their 2 dogs and 4 children visiting Title I schools in every state. They drove to all of these schools, handed out books, did author and illustrator community school visits, and they spent an entire year doing this. It was called the Busload of Books Tour, and I just interviewed them. I'm about to release the podcast because they got back. They survived a year on the road. So there were 6 people, 4 children. They have their oldest child is a 9th grader, all the way down to a 5-year-old, literally living out of this bus, driving to Title I schools all across the country. They flew to Hawaii, but they actually drove to Alaska, giving out kids' books with the support of First Book, and really raising awareness about book access and getting to communities that are often overlooked in terms of author visits and these literacy events. And they just said it was the most fabulous experience. And so I'll be releasing that one this upcoming week. Busload of Book Tours.
And by the way, Molly's, I'm sorry, the podcast is called End Book Deserts, to bring attention to the issue of book access and equity, and that's what Molly does in her spare time, if I may. What was the name of the author and his or her spouse?
It is Matthew Swanson and Robbie Bear, Beehr, and they are an author-illustrator team, longtime married college sweethearts raising 4 human beings of their own, and just had this crazy idea of, why don't we live out of a school bus and drive all across the country for an entire year?
Pretty great. They should have gotten a bigger bus. They should have gotten the bigger bus, I think. I don't know.
Well, they retrofitted the whole thing. So usually where there's that emergency hatch on the roof of a bus, they had a pop-up tent up there, so the kids slept up there in a queen-size bed. But it was you have to listen to them. It's just a comical. They're hilarious, zany. Could not be more dedicated to kids and books, and just did such an amazing job, literally driving across the country.
That's great. And, I hope I did a little plug for you again. End Book Deserts is Molly's podcast. And her book is linked here. It's Read Alouds for All Learners. Molly, it's always great to have you. I thank you, as always.
Thank you. So much fun to talk.
It's great to have you. Okay, I love having you here. So have a good day, good week, and I can say this now. We're getting close enough. Happy Thanksgiving. Have fun.
Yep, and happy holiday season. Where it's right around the corner.
We are. And you can get your Black Friday sales now already. Isn't that wonderful? Joy to the world. Okay, thanks, Molly.
Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. Joy to the world. Remember when Black Friday actually meant something? Now you can get their advertising. Everything's on sale now. Go figure. All right, pretty soon it will start July 5th. That's when the holiday season will begin. We'll archive over at ace-ed.org. I'm Larry Jacobs. That was Molly Ness, Pre-K-12 Education Talk Radio. Thanks for listening. And listen to her podcasts. They're really good. End Book Deserts.